Australia ranks last for climate action among UN member countries.
Here's a summary of the article.
Australia has been ranked last for climate action out of nearly 200 countries in a report assessing progress towards global sustainable development goals. The Sustainable Development Report 2021, first reported by Renew Economy, scored Australia last out of 193 United Nations member countries for action taken to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. A database shows Australia received a score of just 10 out of 100 in an assessment of fossil fuel emissions, emissions associated with imports and exports, and policies for pricing carbon. Richie Mirzian, a climate expert at the Australia Institute, said the result was unsurprising. Australia has received similar rankings from other comparable studies, including the Climate Change Performance Index, which last year ranked Australia second last behind only Trump's America, he said. The report noted Australia had not committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Scott Morrison has instead signaled Australia wants to achieve carbon neutrality as soon as possible and, preferably, by 2050. The most recent emissions data, released by the government in late May, showed Australia's greenhouse gas emissions were at the lowest levels in 30 years as the coronavirus pandemic put a handbrake on fossil fuel burning in the transport sector and slowed economic activity.
This post received a score of 2,100, with an upvote ratio of 96%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Considering Australia has some of the most beautiful natural habitats, this is grounding to say the least that no effort is made to keep them.
Liberal, national conservative governments are the worst offenders, but Labour state governments are contributing in places like Victoria, too. The state Liberal and Labour governments in South Australia and Tasmania have made great strides in renewables. The state Liberal government in NSW is shit on the environment, but still better than the feds. Labour still gets donations from mining companies, and particularly the state Labour governments in Western Australia and Queensland tend to be pro-mining.
This is by far the best sensible summary of what we're dealing with in Australia. Well done, mate.
Mining and resource companies own Australia. Rest of the world needs to sort this shit out. As long as property prices stay high and interest rates stay low, then we're never going to be much use to anyone. Sorry.
People should look up India's Adani Group, which has been buying properties all over the world and using their influence to push their agenda, particularly anti-environment initiatives.
Fucking embarrassing.
51% of the country are fucking it up for the rest of us. And for the whole world, as we are 1% of world emissions. Well, actually more like 3 to 4% if you account for all the coal and gas we export. However, emissions are normally counted in the country where the fuels are burnt, not the country where they are mined. Convenient for Australia, Russia, Canada, USA, Saudi Arabia, etc.
Australian politicians are living their best life, while saying, "fuck you," to the future.
Those politicians didn't magically gain power. They were democratically elected and re-elected.
Murdoch and News Corp no doubt had an effect.
As an Australian, I hope other developed countries start forcing us to change with sanctions if we don't. We are the worst contributors to climate change per capita, with no sign of slowing down anytime soon. Fuck the LNP.
Greater than a database shows Australia received a score of just 10 out of 100 in an assessment of fossil fuel emissions, emissions associated with imports and exports, and policies for pricing carbon. If that's how this calculated, of course Australia is at the bottom. Coal and iron ore are some of their biggest exports.
Needs a fucking Nuremberg trial as far as I'm concerned. The fact they've even tarnished coking coal with thermal coal means we can't even separate the coal we still need to use from environmental efforts. We can come up with alternatives for metallurgical coal needed for steel making. Fuck Scott Morrison. Fuck the Liberal National Party. Fuck capitalism for being so purist to resource allocation. Fuck the Mineral Council of Australia for being so brutishly purist in their push for mining sectors.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.